without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this week's show.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Yeah, welcome everybody to episode 154 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you all live from the Peak. I'm, of course, your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I am Jeremy.
He is Jeremy, and today we are joined by a very special guest. We're excited to have the host of the podcast, Imagine Tomorrow, and a good friend of the channel, Mr. Freddy. Why don't you go ahead and say hello to everybody watching here?
Hi, I'm really excited. I've been waiting for this. It's going to be fantastic. And what a week to do it, too.
Yeah.
What a week. He's also known as Frederick Chambers, in case you want to be a little more formal. So I leave everyone that option.
You guys, whichever you prefer. But yeah, like Freddy said, we do have a really great episode planned for today. Lots of great segments. Lots of breaking news that we're excited to sort of discuss here. Breaking. That just happened earlier today. Very crazy. But yeah, before we get started here, you guys know the drill. Links to all of these socials will be down in the description below, as well as links to Freddy's podcast that he did. He actually did a show with Jeremy a few months ago, didn't you?
We did, yeah, in season 1 of Imagine Tomorrow. Yeah, we discussed Epcot and its transformation, which will show up.
How relevant! Today, we're back talking about the same thing. So
always.
Yeah. Well, if you guys would like to be wished a happy birthday as well, you can always go ahead and click the Google form down in the description. We'll add your birthday to our calendar, and it looks like this week we have 3 birthdays. Tomorrow, Tuesday the 24th, we have Lynette's birthday, a personal friend. Good old Lynette lives out in California, hangs out with us in Disneyland. Thursday the 26th, Jade C's birthday. Happy birthday to Jade, as well as Friday the 27th is Paige's birthday. Happy birthday to Paige and everybody else who didn't happen to submit their birthdays. And you guys, we mean it this time. 575-386-5814. Call in. Leave a voicemail, because I'm sure you guys listening and watching will have a lot to discuss during this episode. Lots of very, very juicy topics. But before we get into any of that, it is, of course, time for, before we get into news from the Peak, it's time for this week's Matt Snap. So let's go ahead and do this thing.
A whole wide world of knowledge waits underneath the cap. It's once again time this week for Matterhorn Night Snaps.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Classic.
It's time for Matt Snaps, everybody. It is indeed a classic. And I actually have Snapple, surprisingly, this week. We're going to throwback here. This is the Kiwi Strawberry Snapple. This used to be my favorite flavor, but I've since moved past it, I guess you could say. But let's go ahead and pop this open. Hopefully we can get a good pop here. Let's see. All right. I can't get a grip. Oh, there it is. I kind of talked over it.
Kind
that
of.
was an all right snap.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh, what a nice mug to put it in, too.
The beautiful...
Again, ladies and gentlemen,
mug.
this is being sold. The price keeps going up. The bids are coming in. I think it's up to 10,000 now.
Wait, last I checked,
put
it
in
was
your bid.
10 billion was the bid, the highest bid. $10 billion for this mug, you guys. Pristine condition.
That mug, the drink that you have to get in order to get that mug, though, was not very good.
That's very
I didn't
surprising.
like it personally.
I loved that drink so much that I've recreated it many times in my household. Yeah, I loved it. But we do have a special treat for you guys here as well. I did go out to a McDonald's near me. And I know I say, off stream and stuff, how McDonald's is not my favorite fast food restaurant to go to, but I had to do it for this very lovely Mickey, what is this, the Runaway Railway toy from McDonald's. So I'm going to go ahead and unbox this here for you, or I guess unrip, I don't know. But what I really wanted to do is unwrap, yeah, not really unbox, but I really wanted to enter this code here to see if I could win a vacation for 4 to Walt Disney World. I'll go ahead and lay this out. Oh, it's kind of cute. It's like a
Mission Space.
Mission Space, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have all of them, but apparently you can connect them to form a long train. Very cool. Does it move by itself? No, it's just a rolly toy.
I thought it was like a wind-up thing?
Runaway railway.
Yeah, well, I thought you'd be able to pull it back and go forward, but I guess not.
Oh. Well, it just did.
It kind of worked.
I think you have to wind it. Now, it doesn't matter. Put in the code. I want to see
We'll
if
do the
they're gonna
code,
take
you
me to
guys.
Disney World.
I'm
Let's
very
go.
excited to see. I was thinking to myself, what would we do? I mean, obviously, since all 3 of us are here, we'd all have to go since we all participated in the redeeming of this code. We just need a 4th. Let's see. I'll type it in here.
I'm sure we could find somebody. I'm sure there's a volunteer out there who would enjoy Disney World.
There's one person. I don't know if I should show.
Do we find out right away if we
I don't
won?
know. Honestly, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if
know
I should
if
even.
you should be showing any of
Yeah, I
this.
don't know if I should be showing it on screen. To be
Too
honest.
late. Keep going with it.
All right, we'll keep going.
All right, everyone, put in the code.
It's
No,
too
okay.
late.
Press, but before someone puts in the code.
Okay, no, we'll go back to this screen, and I'll. Okay, I have a few more letters.
Just gotta make sure
Nope.
it's right.
All right. Submit code. What if we win? All right, here we go.
Now you can. I feel like now you can show the screen.
Oh, you've been entered into the
Way to go.
sweepstakes.
That's what I thought. We're not going to find out.
You've been
but
entered
let
into
us
the
know.
sweepstakes.
Oh,
Who knows
okay.
if we won?
Yeah, I thought it would
Stay
be sort
tuned.
of. Yeah, I thought it'd be sort of an instant thing, but I guess not. Each time you
No,
submit
no.
a code, you'll increase your chances to win a vacation. Limit 5 entries per day, so you can only enter 5 codes a day. It's a lot of.
All right,
food.
Matt, go to McDonald's.
All right, guys.
Yes, McDonald's,
We're gonna
5
be
Happy
doing-
Meals every day.
We're gonna be doing the rest of the stream from my phone. Is how that's gonna go, but yeah. Well, I guess.
Oh boy.
You know, we'll find out. We'll keep you guys updated if we win or not. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, that's been this week's Matt Snaps, Matt Unwraps. Oh, there it is. New name for the segment. Yeah, but now it is of course
Hi.
time to get into this week's news from the peak. Let's do this.
We now present to you news from the peak.
All right, Mr. Jeremy, what kind of news
Yeah.
from the peak do we have today?
All right, our first bit of news from the peak is a high-speed railway station to be built at Disney Springs. Disney and Brightline High Speed Railway have reached an agreement to build a station at Disney Springs. This is to be included as part of Brightline's new railway, which is expected to extend from Miami to Orlando. While there hasn't been a specific location selected for the Disney Springs station, engineering has already begun earlier this year. Very interesting news.
Yeah, this is.
I don't
like
really
a-
know what to make of it, to be honest. It's
like
nice. We need more high-speed railways around the country, so I guess let's start from Miami to Orlando.
And then from Orlando to Las Cruces, New Mexico. Right,
Hey.
let's go. But yeah, hasn't this been a long time coming? I feel like we discussed something about a train being
Maybe.
built from like an airport or something to Walt Disney World. Either way, very interesting news, Mr. Freddy. What are your thoughts here on the high-speed railway to be built at Disney Springs?
Well, it really reminds me of the railway they have at Disneyland Paris, where you could ride from London basically straight to Disneyland Paris. In this way, when you land at Orlando, you're at the airport, you should be able to actually walk to the train station and use the high-speed rail to get to Disney World. Instead of using the Magic Express, you could use high-speed rail. You could use Brightline. So it is an interesting alternative to that and adding into the transportation to get to Disney World. But it is just one of those things of like just another mode of transportation that helps alleviate traffic on the freeways there and also helps with the general tourism and transportation throughout that area. So it's all good.
Very sweet. The more trains, the merrier, in my opinion. But
yeah.
For our second bit of news from the peak here today, this is exciting news here. The Partners statue at Disneyland has recently been restored. the late Imagineer Blaine Gibson's iconic 1993, which is, I guess, an interesting point, that this statue's only been around since 1993.
I know.
Which you'd think it'd have been there from the beginning just because it's such a staple of the park, but yeah, that's crazy to think.
Right.
But the classic bronze statue Partners, which rests in the central hub of Disneyland, has received a full restoration while the park remains closed due to COVID-19. And Blog Mickey reports that a, quote, artisan utilized a process of crushed walnut shells to gently strip the figure down to the bare bronze. And after cleansing, various chemicals were applied and heated with a blowtorch to create a reaction and fuse with the bronze. The figure was coated in a polymer to protect the paint and coated with a very thin layer of wax. So yeah, very exciting stuff coming here out of Disneyland. As you can see, this is what it looks like. Yeah, it's really not big news. Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on the restored Partners statue in Disneyland?
It's nice. It's nice to restore it. Of course, it's not necessarily. I know Blog Mickey said that it's restored to the way it was originally looked. That's impossible. That's not true. It's pretty impossible to get bronze back to the sort of the really reflective and almost close to gold quality that it has. But it's cool that they have done some restoration work on it. Obviously, you know, it's an important statue there, sculpted by the greatest Disney sculptor of all time, yes. Blaine Gibson, the one and only. It's nice that they took the time to do that restoration work.
Oh my gosh, excuse me. I just choked.
Don't eat the toy.
You guys can see my camera. That's literally what I was doing. Just kidding. Well, restoration here. And Mr. Jeremy, what do we have for our final bit of news from the Peak? This is a very special final bit of news from the Peak as well, might I add.
So, as everybody knows, Disney California Adventures Buena Vista Street has reopened. November 9th, Disney expanded downtown Disney to reach into the Buena Vista Street area of Disney California Adventure, reopening many shops and restaurants to the public. And one of our longtime viewers, Mark, who I think I see him in the chat,
yes.
Has contributed special footage and commentary from the opening day. So I think we should take a look at that. I don't know about you, Matt.
I agree. Let's go ahead and switch over to Mark's very special vlog that he produced here for us. And very excited to get into this. This is a very great video. I watched it beforehand. Shout out to Mark, great friend of the channel. And let's go ahead and get right into this week's, or I guess this episode's video.
When you open the Disneyland app today, it opens with a message of returning to a land of magic. That's exactly what this is. And while we wish that it's Disneyland that had reopened, at least we get to experience a piece of the parks today. I had arrived at the pickup drop-off location at 7 a.m. Apparently, that wasn't early enough, with the earliest folks reportedly being there as early as 4 a.m. And the energy in that line early on was astounding. And so every step towards that gate, I then had a mix of emotions. Yes, I was feeling very happy, but there was also a feeling of uncertainty and unfamiliarity. Was it the fact that we didn't go through the turnstiles, nor paid an admission to go in?
Woo! For the first time in 251 days, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in a Disney park in the West Coast.
And it was also very satisfying to see land decked out for the holiday season. And seeing everybody all so happy, waving at us, and all these cast members waving at us, you felt like you're back at home. And you can see on your right, you have the cast member with a bubble wand and the cast member with the Mickey mitt. You know, there's something that's satisfying about that.
The line for Carthay Circle is immense. And we also have a piece of Hollywoodland currently open for us, and you can see down there is the rent car trolley hidden from view since 2019 because of the Avengers Campus construction. How I wish Gone Hollywood and Off the Page would be open, but they're not. So you have award winners on this side, and they are encouraging you to put a mobile order in. I thoroughly appreciate now that mobile order is going to be a massive thing. That way it is contactless. You don't have to wait in a long line. You can just wait for your mobile order to process when it's ready.
Hollywoodland right here is the eastern border of the Buena Vista Street experience. And as you can see, they brought out the trolley all dressed up in its festive Christmas gear. On the left, you can see a churro cart, which is available, but I'm not sure if you can access stage 17 from here. And on the right side is Off the Page. Now, Off the Page is still closed, but with Wonderground Gallery currently being home of the Galaxy's Edge experience, I'd rather have most of the artwork that was sold there at Wonderground to be on sale at Off the Page. And many Disney fans have enjoyed Off the Page for its selection of pins and artwork. And I personally think that it would be a gold mine, especially with all the demand, to reopen. So here we are inside Big Top Toys and Elias and Company. That entire side is one entire store. And you can see here the gigantic child Funko Pop. I bought one myself just a couple months ago. And right here is the train. It's a nice little thing that's giving us some motion inside the park. Nice little cute addition right there.
So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we are getting a Christmas tree here, but the planter is pretty nice and pleasant. It is a nice sitting area, so you can sit down here between the non-availables. There is a Christmas tree down in downtown Disney, right next to the line for the Buena Vista Street experience. I did make a purchase today, so let's go ahead and check that out. So you see I have the blue version of the Spirit Jersey mask, and it's very comfortable. Frankly, it's very safe. I also have this, the red and green one, very festive Christmas one, and a good complement to the to this blue Disneyland mask. It feels really reminiscent to the Diamond Celebration 5 years ago. This is the menu right here. Lots of caramel on the menu, as well as the marshmallow wands. So you can see right above the wall, light fixtures. It's very angled, it's very sharp and angled if you come around this way. You know, it's very sleek. I really like it. It looks like something that Galaxy's Edge would have. So as we continue up the main place, the main walkway, as you can see, no more booths from Food and Wine. It's been way too long since that. And this is your northernmost border. You can see Cars Land. You can see right into Cars Land, and that's as far as you can go. Pixar Pier all the way in the back. Humphreys is closed. Now, I really love this place because this is the only place, I think, in DCA that has Coke freestyle machines. Now, of course, because of COVID, most likely what they would have to do is the attendant would have to get the drink for you, but apparently it's not going to be open today. This is one of the best places to get a drink because you can use your AP discount here as well. You still have the prices that are frozen in time that are out here, so that's pretty interesting. If we go across the walkway, we also have the entrance to Soarin'. And Sarin has its tables out here, and they have tables everywhere. So there's a ton of seating, and it's very well spaced out, so you're feeling safe in this environment. Well, what a fun time we've had today here at Buena Vista Street, the extension to downtown Disney. It just feels kind of strange not paying to come into this part of the park. There's something that feels off and missing, but it's a free experience, so I'll take it either way. Buena Vista Street will remain open through downtown Disney hours, so that's going to be around 10 to 8 on weekdays, 10 to 9 on the weekends. As we head into the holiday season, things could change depending on COVID situations, such as any potential shutdowns, God forbid.
And as we headed out for the final time that day, we got the notification that Governor Newsom implemented a curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
And finally, masks, expected at this point. It has been a point of contention everywhere in the United States. Frankly, it shouldn't, but it is. So there's going to be cast members everywhere reminding you to keep your mask on. If you do plan to eat, make sure you're stationary and all the way off to the side, pulled over, and away from anybody else. Other than that, it should be a great and safe experience.
And that wraps up a very special segment of Mark at the Parks. Special thanks to
Mark at the Parks.
Yeah, Mark at the Parks. Special thanks to our friend Mark. Link to his channel will be down in the description. TASG vlogs. Mark's a cool guy. I like Mark a lot. Glad he's gotten into our friend group here. But yeah, really great video. Cinematic. Thank you, Mr. Mark. And that does it for this week's news from the Peak. And I teased it at the beginning, guys. We have some really great topics to get to today. Our first topic today, surprise retirement announcement from Imagineer Joe Rhode. And after that, we'll be getting into the future project announcements for the Disney parks. Very excited to get into that. But unfortunately, that would have been our main topic if this first topic that we're going to be talking about here hadn't happened today. We are going to be discussing the retirement of Mr. Joe Rhode. Very sad. Walt Disney Imagineering made a sudden announcement earlier today that Imagineer Joe Rhode would be retiring at the start of the new year. Oh, that's not the right screen there. Okay, I'll fix it in a bit. Would be retiring at the start of the new year on January 4th. Later, he released a personal statement on his Instagram in which he expressed that it was the right time to leave the company of which he had been a part for nearly 40 years. And he says, quote, "If I wait, I'll once again be in the middle of another huge project, and by the time that's done, I would be truly old," unquote. However, he also expressed that, quote, "I'm not that old, and there are things I want to do that cannot be done here," unquote. He closed his statement by saying that he feels he, quote-unquote, owes a great deal to his colleagues and the guests themselves and is incredibly grateful for the past 40 years at Walt Disney Imagineering. Now, I think we can go ahead and pause just right off the bat there. Just the announcement of, Joe Rhode, one of the most legendary second-generation Imagineers, leaving, retiring. That's a very crazy to me. Let's go ahead and start with Mr. Jeremy. What are your thoughts here on Joe Rhode announcing his retirement?
I mean, I came out of left field, really. I mean, that was, woke up and saw that, and, I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. But, good for him. I mean, knowing when to get off is always good. And he's right. It takes years to get projects, even finished in Blue Sky and then out of Blue Sky. And he's right. I mean, he could get involved in another major project that could take up another decade of his time. So I totally respect his decision to leave. He's an incredibly talented and passionate artist, and I can't wait to see whatever it is that he does next.
very sad. Mr. Freddy, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, in this case, Joe Rhode, he's one of sort of the last, the second generation Imagineers to leave. I mean, he's on the tail end of the second generation, but he was still brought in around that time. He's kind of like on the end of that area. And so he's one of the most most Imagineers that was currently employed there until now. And this is definitely his retirement. He's making this choice. It's not, I know there's been speculation whether he was forced out or laid off, and that's simply not the case. He's made this decision, and he's clearly, there's motive behind this, and it makes a lot of sense. And as you pointed out, getting locked up in a project that can be 5 years, just for something like an attraction. If he's working on a theme park or an entire land, that can be even longer. And that's definitely true. And Joe Rhode, he is actually an explorer. He's not just an Imagineer. He goes all over the world looking at artifacts. He is kind of like Indiana Jones in some ways. And he really does live out that adventure. The adventures that he puts into the parks, he himself embarks on. And so he definitely wants to continue to do that in his life, while he is able to. I mean, there's definitely there's two notable things that I think we were sort of hoping to see. And I think number one was his opportunity to fix the Yeti, which is one that's, sort of the unfortunate consequence of this is, he won't be there at the moment. But I think we have to remind ourselves of Imagineers like Tony Baxter, who have been brought back to consult on projects. So if they do actually decide to fix the Yeti at some point, you can be sure that Imagineering will call up Joe Rhode to consult. But he doesn't want to be the type of guy who's going to be heavily involved with a project like that in the future, completely dedicating all of his time and energy to that. He has a family, he has his own projects and ambitions that he wants to embark on. So he will be able to, do his own thing, but he can be brought back for these different projects that he's passionate about.
And he's not the only Imagineer in the history of Imagineering that are world travelers and explorers. Ken Anderson was known for traveling the world a lot, and so was Claude Coates, I believe. And they actually did a lot of paintings based on their travels. So he is in a long line of great Imagineers and great artists in general who were inspired by the whole world. So he was right at home at Disney, and I'm excited for his post-Disney career. He's a very creative person, and I highly doubt that he'll disappear from creating things after this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Freddie mentioned his traveling, and if you follow his Instagram, he posts a lot of great pictures of him, traveling and stuff with the, but, well, I guess we should continue on here. Walt Disney Imagineering President Bob. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would like to note one more thing here, and it comes from his reasoning behind leaving, and that is the completion of projects and having this cut off. And he does mention in that Instagram post about how this lull, this sort of pause that has happened in terms of WDI and development is what contributed to him retiring. And there was actually, I had heard rumors and speculation a few months ago that Joe Rhode was going to leave, that it had been posted on a few different boards, that it was being, speculated about. Nothing sort of, at that time, it was definitely a case of like, people were wondering, why would he be leaving? Why would this happen? I mean, it really is a case where any project that he was working on has most likely been shelved or, put off to the side indefinitely. There was a rumor for a little bit there that he was involved with Tomorrowland at Disneyland with the idea of creating an eco-based future. And since that project has been taken from us and any Imagineers involved with it have been laid off from the company, that's sort of the last thing that he would have been working on. And he would have been on that project for 3 to 4 years, seeing it through. But since COVID has now happened, that pushes all of that off in the distance, and who knows when they'll get to it. So for Joe Rhode, it's a case where this is a jumping off point. He has the opportunity to leave without needing to manage a transition or getting trapped in a current project. So that's kind of what I have to say about that, just ending it there.
Man, that just sucks.
That's very
I completely forgot about that Tomorrowland rumor and him until Freddy brought it up just now, and that, that's just terrible news. But yeah, anyways, continuing
That's the kind of Tomorrowland we need, and that's the correct person to assign to that. And I sincerely hope that he has vetted whoever remains to fight for that type of Tomorrowland, because that's going to be an uphill battle without him there with executives. So anyway, Matt, continue with the story.
Anyways, continuing on here, Walt Disney Imagineering president Bob Weiss, I believe is how I've never actually said his last name out loud, but has also released a statement.
You said it right.
You're good. You're perfect.
Okay, perfect. I shouldn't have said anything and embarrassed myself, but that's okay. Walt Disney Imagineering president Bob Weiss also released a statement earlier in which he praised Joe Rhode, saying, quote, "I know he will remain part of our Imagineering family, a mentor to our current and future generations, and certainly the best example to our worldwide audience of what it is to be an Imagineer." And Joe is perhaps most famous, of course, for leading ambitious projects such as the Animal Kingdom and its various additions such as Expedition Everest and Pandora, the world of Avatar, but he also leaves behind a resounding and unique understanding of what theme parks are and all the potential for what they can do and say. And of course, we do wish him the absolute best. Of course, he'll go on to continue creating stuff like you guys mentioned, but it was very sad that he's going to be leaving the company, having that, creative voice, which when I was watching the Imagineering story, the episodes with him where he was just talking, it's just so mesmerizing. Just hearing him talk, it's just amazing. He's like a true artist in my eyes. It's just him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember being very young and watching Disney Channel, and he would pop up and really walk us through Animal Kingdom as it was being constructed, and he sort of pulled a Walt. He was the face of that park, and because of that, he always has been. And he did it again in 2006. I remember he would pop up again and walk us through the design process for Expedition Everest, and he truly is the face of that park in the way that Walt was the face of Disneyland. And I think that is a fair comparison. And I've always considered him to be sort of in some ways, very much like John Hench. He sort of carries with him, and he communicates so effectively. If you go on his Instagram, I mean, it's like novels each post. But what those posts are is very similar to what John Hench did later in his career, which is really communicate in a really effective way all the design principles and philosophies of how to design a themed space and what theme means, what park means, what those words mean together. So he's really carried that torch, I think, in communicating what theme park means. And I'm sure he'll continue to do that as well after his retirement. So, yeah.
Well, we do have a voicemail to get to here from none other than Mr. Mark himself. So let's go ahead and take a listen here to what Mr. Mark has to say.
Hey, what's up, guys? Mark here. Thank you guys for the opportunity for letting me do Market Theme Parks again. I have not done that series in 3 long years, so it's great to revisit it. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on Downtown Disney as it is the holiday weekend. It has been extremely busy, even for a Monday. Earlier today, I had to circle the park 3 times because the parking lot was full and they hit capacity really early on in the day. In addition to that, joining the queue for Buena Vista Street would take upwards of 2 hours. So it's been insanely busy. So I just want to say, if you do plan to go on a day that's around the next 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, because the holiday weekend is going to be insanely busy. Thank you guys again for the opportunity, and thank you. So long.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mark. We appreciate your lovely cinematography. But yeah, I think, very sad. Mr. Joe Rhode, I never got a chance to meet him, sadly. Hopefully one day we'll see him around. You guys have pretty much summed up a lot of what...
I expect you'll see a lot more of him in the future, actually.
Really?
Now that he's no longer tied down, sure, he'll probably be outside of WDI a lot more than he has been in the past.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. You guys mentioned, I'm sure you guys mentioned about him being one of the last, one of the last of the second generation Imagineers, and what's going to happen to Imagineering after he leaves? Who's going to be that sort of creative voice to, push forward for, good projects? That's, I'm sure, what's going to be the main concern for a lot of us going forward. And, unfortunately, just a few weeks ago, we did cover the Imagineers, a lot of the Imagineers getting laid off. So it just begs the question of really who is left in Imagineering to, try to do the best for the parks, try to do the best to keep, Walt's vision moving forward. It's very, I don't know. When I first heard this news, I thought it was a joke, but it's real. It's happening, you guys. Joe Rhode, Joe Rhode is officially retiring, like we mentioned, January 4th. And of course, we do wish him the best. And unless you guys have any final thoughts, I think it might be time to go ahead and move forward here.
Let's do it.
Very, very briefly, I hope this D23 is happening in now 2 years. So you better get a Disney Legend award there. That would be a total missed opportunity.
Agreed. And we will be there to help him put his handprints in it. We will be the ones pushing his hand into, I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
But
followed by a lawsuit. Okay.
Yes. It will get us on the map. Just kidding. But before we get into our final topic here, let's go ahead and take a quick break to hear from the show's sponsors. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. And we are back, everybody. And shout out to Mr. Alex the Historian, who is in the chat today. Alex, hello. Glad to have you watching us currently. We hope you are enjoying the show. Yeah, it's going to be a great final topic to get to today. Jeremy, what is our final topic that we'll be discussing?
Yeah, it's a lot. So from IAPA to D23, what is in store for the future of the Disney theme parks? Last week, between November 16th and the 20th, D23 held a series of presentations in a special week-long event called D23's Fantastic Worlds. There were a variety of panels offered, ranging from an in-depth look at the animated masterpiece Fantasia, which just celebrated its 80th anniversary, to new announcements regarding the future of the highly anticipated Epcot overhaul. Most of these events left many fans confused at the lack of details regarding many new projects, which led Disney to release an updated clarification of the new things we can expect for Epcot moving forward. You may also recall on last week's show that we briefly covered just a few of Josh D'Amaro's remarks in his keynote address at the annual IAPA conference. As it turns out, there is a lot more to mine in this address than what was previously covered, and it just so happens that our guest tonight not only caught that full address, but a number of those D23 panels mentioned above. So I say let's get right to it and explore what all of these things mean for the future of the Disney parks.
Yes.
It's a pretty open-ended, a lot of things to explore. So, Freddy, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. Where should we start with this monster of a couple weeks?
Well, I think it's interesting how the IAPA presentation happened right before D23, the Fantastic Worlds thing. And it was a case where there's a lot of information that was in there, but it wasn't available to the general public or to D23 members and fans. So a lot of the information that was out there had to be gleaned from parks blogs or from YouTube clips. And, you know, that presentation was definitely directed towards other people in the industry itself. so it wasn't directed towards fans, but it does give us a good view into the mindset of the company at the moment and the mindset of Josh D'Amaro as the head of the Parks and Products division. I'm kind of doing a brief summary of everything. In this case, with the Fantastic World presentation, I only really focused in on the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge panel, the Epcot panel, and then the Fantastic Worlds, like sort of world building panel. Out of those, the only one that had any substance was the Epcot panel, and even that substance was, as we stated, confusing. Mostly focusing on the aesthetics, the changes that have been taking place periodically, whether that's the colors, the symbols, even the sort of writing of Epcot, the font itself around the resort, just the way that the resort is transforming and changing. But again, not a lot of specifics there, which is why we had the press release today. I don't know what you really want to go in depth with first, Jeremy. Where do you want to take this?
Oh God, like throwing it back at me. I thought I was throwing you the ball. The ball's back at me. I'm trying to dribble it, but I've always been terrible at basketball. So, let's leave that image out here. I'm trying to find the best place to. Let's talk about the panels, and I think Josh D'Amaro is a good place to transition into, as it's kind of a sort of a rhetorical overview of what possibly this next whole decade as a whole lies. But right now we have Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. Within that, it was supposed to be this huge Epcot overhaul. What would you say are the main takeaways from that Epcot presentation versus then what was in the clarification press release today? Like what was vague in that presentation that was cleared up today?
Well, again, it was a lot of hyperbole and sort of the reason for doing things emotionally and their emotional connections to Epcot. I mean, all the people who were in that panel had an emotional connection. That was kind of the focus, though, was on what's at the core of Epcot, what are we trying to tell? And it's the whole thing of introducing Disney storytelling, which we've brought up before, into that conversation. You know, it's taking sort of the ideas of the future and the ideas of predicting the future or, you know, building towards that and, you know, replacing that with storytelling as the core of what Epcot is going to be now. You know, essentially a community of stories is what they're looking at doing. Something that's interesting is you have that message, which has continued from D23 previously, where they, you know, officially revealed all of this. I mean, it's the exact same message. It's just sort of expanded. But there was no focus in terms of what happened to the festival center, what happened to the Spaceship Earth overhaul. They really didn't get to that. In the panel itself, they talked about, hey, we're having a lighting package to the outside of the, you know, Spaceship Earth. That it's that kind of a thing of here's the lighting package. What's happening with, you know, Spaceship Earth itself? We're going to ignore that at the moment because we just don't know. And there's so much unknown taking place at WDI right now in terms of what projects are moving forward, what projects are being delayed, that it's really difficult for them to have that conversation, which again, the clarifying message came in. And this clarified both for the Epcot panel and for Josh D'Amaro's statements earlier, that projects like the Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind will be opening in 2021 and will be opening in time for the 50th anniversary, meaning it'll open late summer, early fall. So that is actually like that was a substantial clarification that only happened in this press release, that they really, you know, stated that clearly. I mean, in terms of Epcot, you have Ratatouille that they're working on right now. And from a whole bunch of different sources, it seems like that project is completed. Everything's working and ready to go, and it's simply a matter of time before it opens. At this point, I think the best guess is like end of January, early February is what they're looking at. So sort of right when things slow down, that's when they want to bring in Ratatouille to kind of pick up the pace. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, I would imagine that it will, you know, open up fully once the vaccine enters the picture, which we just don't know at this point when that really will be. But it seems like that's sort of the focus is the vaccine's available. Now we can open everything, you know, open the doors wide open.
Yeah, fingers crossed that there's a lot of progress made on a vaccine. It's funny. I mean, ever since the Epcot overhaul was announced, my number one concern that I have expressed over and over again since the day it was announced, or whenever we first went on, was that it seems to be the primary focus is the aesthetic of the park.
Yeah.
But if you capture the aesthetic of Epcot and what that means, but there's very little underneath, then what is there really in the park? They talk a lot about stories, and of course we talked a lot about on your show, Freddy, what that could possibly mean. I'm worried that we still don't have any clear communication of theme aside from the magic of possibility, more timeless, more relevant, more Disney, whatever that means, and storytelling. It's so vague to me, and I'm worried that the only focus this entire time has been aesthetic, and let's try to rebrand the place to fit as many properties as possible, and we'll call it this is a park about deconstructing storytelling, and I even think that's giving it too much credit by saying deconstructing storytelling. I'm worried about that. Is that a worry you share, or is there more? Even though there was more of an emphasis on aesthetic, still kind of using storytelling as a marketing phrase, along with those other two phrases attached to New Epcot. Is there any sort of glimmer of hope that we will get some sort of theme communicated to us? And just before you answer that, I'm just immediately thinking about Joe Rhode walking us through Animal Kingdom, communicating, articulating so clearly what the theme is, what the ideas of the park is about. I don't see this at all with Epcot. And I wonder if it's just because of the circumstances that have happened the past year, and they were waiting to communicate those things, or I kind of think it really hasn't been that deeply thought out, considering we've only had sort of a trio of very clearly thought out marketing phrases. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that and the direction of that.
I think that the way to look at this conversation and the lack of clarity in the communication of it all really comes from sort of a lack of ammunition. It's like you have all of the sort of facade completed, but behind it, the substance is fallen away, mostly due to COVID and budget cuts and this and that. I forget the name of the Imagineer. I was about to look up the name of the Imagineer who's heading the Epcot overhaul, and he's a relatively young Imagineer.
I was just reading about him earlier today, and I'm forgetting his name as well.
I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah,
Matt, if you can help look that up while I go.
I'm searching.
I want to say
it is Zach.
Zach.
Yes, I'm sure it's Zach, but I don't remember his last name.
The last name, yeah.
But it is a case where, like, they have passion for what they're doing. They have a goal that they want to accomplish in this rebranding. They know what that rebranding ends up looking like. Their problem is having an attraction like Spaceship Earth, which is meant to be the icon, and also the way in which the park's story is delivered to its audience. That's why that attraction is so important. But to have that refurb cut out, that retheme, that reworking of the attraction to move from communication to storytelling, then you lose your ability to communicate all of that substance to the audience. And so that's what we're dealing with right now is they're moving towards the anniversary of Epcot, where they've done all of the facade work, they've done all the outside stuff without being able to actually build the attractions, build the experiences that deliver on that promise, deliver on that vision. The best comparison between what's happening with Epcot right now is the DCA 2.0 reimagining, the introduction of Buena Vista Street and Cars Land. That is the comparison. You have to think of Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind as the Cars Land. It's the big thrilling thing that brings you into that theme park. That's the draw. People go to California Adventure for Cars Land. Buena Vista Street is just the transition into that experience. It introduces you to the park and its themes. It was moving away from the postcard vision of California to more of a romanticized vision of California, which has proven to succeed over time. And people have a lot of nostalgia for that park now. People have a lot of nostalgia for Epcot. The question is, how do you capitalize on that nostalgia to transition people into the idea of telling these stories? I mean, you have Ratatouille that's coming out, and the transformation of the France Pavilion. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of the model. And we talked about this on Imagine Tomorrow on that episode. That is the basis upon which all of World Showcase will be changed. Every pavilion at some point in the future is now an expansion pad for a story to be told, whether that's a Pixar or a Disney animation film or something live action. It is a place where you can put an attraction or an experience that is a Disney story that is also authentic in some way to that place in the world. You know, it's the blending of both our real world with the fictional stories we tell one another that they're trying to deliver on. And as you've stated, you know, that's great in theory, in concept, but when you're doing a presentation and all of a sudden half the projects that deliver upon that are gone and you can't really talk about them, then you're just left with the aesthetic. We'll spend 10 minutes just talking about the typography in the park, about the paint job, because that's all we have. And again, that's the reason for the clarifying statement, is sort of saying, hey, some of these things are happening and some of these things aren't. Clarifying about the expo center is now an expo space. It's right. Okay,
festival area.
Festival area. That is the statement. That is the actual proper terminology here.
Yeah.
And that is, it's important that they are releasing that information and sort of adjusting our expectations. I still expect that we will have a great park at the end of this, that Epcot will have sort of a purpose again, because there is, I personally believe in the vision that they're moving towards. I think that it is just as effective as DCA 2.0 has been and has become. DCA is now a really great park. Even I personally have been to Buena Vista Street now 3 times in the last few days. I had to go get my fill before the madness ensues. But even stepping into Buena Vista Street, there is something there. And that's just your entry land. There's still an experience there. And there's a soul to that park that didn't necessarily exist when they opened it. And what happened with Epcot is it had that soul, then it lost it, and now it's being reforged, it's being remade. And so the hope is that it will have that soul again. So let's hope that they're able to deliver on these promises. But when you have projects like Mary Poppins, which had a standing ovation when they brought Dick Van Dyke on stage, and it was obvious at that time, that, oh, wait a second, people love this and they want it. I don't know if anyone was really calling for Ratatouille to come to the Paris Pavilion, but the moment you suggest Cherry Tree Lane is going to exist at a Disney park, which we have wanted for decades, Tony Baxter envisioned a version of the attraction,
right?
And now you're actually delivering upon that. One little thing about that, apparently it was originally meant to just be a meet and greet experience. Then they realized it needed to be an attraction, so they were trying to whip up something that they had already. Apparently one of the versions was some sort of carousel with projection around it. So similar to in the movies where, the real world becomes animated, you would have that similar experience. But that was still all up in the air, and they were trying to find the budget for it. The Mary Poppins Returns film did not do well at the box office, and thus didn't really justify the price tag of a full attraction. And yet a Mary Poppins attraction would still be very successful and have a massive draw that I don't think Imagineering necessarily realized. So I do hope that those things return. With all the projects that have been canceled, or even rumored projects that have been delayed indefinitely, it is a case where I do expect some of these things to come back, but they won't look the same way as they originally did.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason why there hasn't been word about Spaceship Earth or even Mary Poppins is because they're not ruled out. There's been they're not gone. They're just figuring out how to and when to. I think the appropriate time is to rework on them. I can't imagine them just not redoing Spaceship Earth, at least. I mean, that would be so strange.
Jeremy, you say that, but they've left Carousel of Progress to rot.
It's different, though. That's different. This is a overhaul of the park. They're inserting a new theme into it. It's trying to communicate a new theme. And like Freddy was saying, Spaceship Earth is is the avenue in which the story of the park is given. So definitely Spaceship Earth. I would be surprised if they didn't. Carousel Progress is a whole other issue. We've talked about it on the show. I'm sure we'll talk about it a million times in the future. Not gonna go on a tangent on that. But going off of what you're talking about souls returning to parks, let's transition to Josh D'Amaro. I think that's a good transition point to talking about Josh D'Amaro. So Freddy and I yesterday, we actually sat down and watched that entire keynote address. Matt was busy. But I thought it was fascinating, and thank you for sharing that for this show. I don't even know where to begin. I will say this. I mean, we talked so much about it yesterday that I'm kind of like, I don't even know what to talk about now, but we're on the air. Have to talk about something. So I was my takeaway from that. Well, I guess why don't you summarize the full address before we break it down so people aren't confused?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the panel overall, it was very structured. The first part of it was very similar to watching sort of like a Michael Eisner presentation back in the day, where he's, hello, I'm Michael Eisner. It was, hello, I'm Josh D'Amaro. And he's walking down the steps of the Main Street train station. And he goes through, he does a really good job of going through the damage that the pandemic has done in terms of the overall industry and how it's affected people. And he talks about all of that. He talks about, like, look at how great we were doing in 2019. And then all of a sudden 2020 happens. And how do we manage that? How do we deal with it? So he discusses how the parks are doing around the world and how they're adjusting and how things are changing to adapt to pandemic life. He eventually gets to an area where he gives an update on general projects around the world, including Avengers Campus, showing off sort of the, a lot of the information that you would expect in a D23 panel. And that's kind of what this felt like to me. I felt like you could take this and just put it on Disney Plus or put it on the D23 website, and it would be, really effective. I think that there was a certain aspect, though, that it was directed towards people who are already in the industry, whether they're in WDI or it's another theme park, partner or a different company. So it wasn't necessarily directed towards guests in terms of what they were trying to communicate and the hope and optimism that they are trying to bring into the conversation. I think, Jeremy, you and I talked a lot about this at the end, and this is what we're going to get into, is the end, the end of the conversation, which some of which what has been released and the rest of it wasn't, sort of the beginning of that conversation, but where he really is talking about daring the industry to be better and to move forward. And he goes into a lot here, which we can actually, bring up. But, it's interesting to have somebody who's so passionate about, the area that he's in. This passion didn't exist with Chapek. You didn't see a presentation like this during the Chapek, period of time. And there are reasons for that. But it feels good to have somebody who really cares about what they're doing, being involved with that. The sad part of that is that this is overshadowed by the layoffs and by the cancellation of or postponement of projects at WDI. The fact that you have let go of 400 Imagineers and you have let go of all these cast members, and there are good reasons that they have, and it's hard from an emotional side to deal with that because I personally know people who are being let go, and people at WDI. There are a few people who have already retired or left WDI who were posting on Twitter saying, I don't know a single person anymore who works there. And to have that is really that's an emotional thing, to be like, all my friends who were building these things, they're gone now. And they don't know if they're ever going to be able to come back. Yeah. A lot of them are transitioning to the aviation industry. And once you do that, it's very odd there's a very slim chance that happens, that they come back from that. So for a lot of the people at WDI, this is the last time that they're going to be involved with the project or be there at the company. And so to have that over this presentation of optimism and a very clear direction and mandate from him, from the man on top of what's going to happen in the future, it's one of those difficult things to wrestle with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good way of putting it. We did talk extensively about that. Um, I think we took away very similar things. I still, and I mentioned this yesterday, I still like you and like Matt, I still like Josh Tomorrow a lot. I think there's a stark difference in the way he is, next to Bob Chapek. I mean, even Bob Chapek as the leader of the company. I mean, you don't see him. You don't hear from him. Maybe he goes on the CNBC and talks about stock and money stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I will say, though, maybe he doesn't believe in himself, because the 2 times he did speak publicly about Galaxy's Edge, I found him to be quite passionate about what he was talking about. I don't really agree with the way he ran that department during his tenure, but I thought he was quite passionate the way he talked about Galaxy's Edge. Aside from the barrier to entry comment, which I use a lot.
I think this will be helpful for, real quick, Jeremy. This will be helpful for listeners or viewers. Just a sort of a brief summary of Chapek in terms of like why he was in charge of the parks. He was actually in charge of the products division, for a while, and then they merged the parks division into that. Because I forget the name who was in charge of parks. He was going to be CEO, but he ended up leaving the company because
Tom Staggs.
Tom Staggs. Because Tom Staggs left, there was a hole to be filled. So instead of filling that position, they decided to merge products with parks, which this will lead into the conversation that we're going to have here. So anyway, Chapek takes over the parks division, but he's a products guy. His entire thing is looking at the numbers. He's from accounting. He sees, this is how many shirts we're selling. This is how much, merch and food we're selling. That's what matters. How many guests are we getting through? What are the analytics? How many guests are going through an attraction is important. This is efficiency, and capacity was the number one concern. That was the number one concern above everything else, above creativity. And that sort of had an effect on all of the projects he oversaw during that time. Projects like Pixar Pier and Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout were done to show we can accomplish a project as quickly as possible, and with spending as few dollars as possible, that we can come under budget or come at budget. And this was all done to show to shareholders that the whole entire parks division could operate in that way and still be successful. That it doesn't matter how cheaply you build something, people will still come and see it. And that's pretty much a summary of the Chapek era, and it was why he was chosen as CEO. Is the shareholders like him, the banks like him, because he's a guy who can run the company slim, and he can really operate as effectively as possible in the numbers category. The problem is that Disney is not necessarily a numbers organization. It's a whole bunch of people. It's a whole bunch of people who are working together, creating art and being passionate about these things. It's a company built upon passions. And when it loses sight of that, that's when you start to see the issues sort of creep in, and it all starts to sort of buckle under its own weight. That's when you see a film that, doesn't necessarily impact you the way you expect it to. The live action reboots, the live action remakes and the Star Wars franchise, for instance, where things start to degrade, and you have that versus the difference of a project that somebody's super passionate about, like The Mandalorian that we're seeing right now on Disney Plus, where somebody's able to actually deliver on sort of their goal. They're able to say something with it, or they understand the franchise that they're developing in, that they're working in. I would say that Jon Favreau is a good comparison to who Josh D'Amaro has been. Josh D'Amaro has been working in the industry for a long time. He has been invested in the parks for a long time. He's been president of multiple resorts, and he's been so successful in those positions that he has just hopped from one place to the next, moving along, impacting all of these different parks and resorts around the United States. And to see him move into that position from the park side versus the product side does have an impact. You're moving from somebody who is coming from the product side, dictating what the parks are going to look like, Now you have somebody from the park side dictating what the products and the experiences are going to look like. And that, while it still remains to be seen what this is ultimately going to look like, it sets up Josh D'Amaro. Josh D'Amaro is setting up an era of success for the company in the parks division. Even though we might be at the lowest position that we have ever been, I think personally that this, the COVID crisis in 2020 is the most damaging thing to ever happen to the company since Disneyland Paris, or even when it was at risk of being bought out. And really, that's where we're seeing ourselves. Disney was running out of cash to the point that it could not afford to continue to have construction projects like Tron or like Guardians. But in the last few weeks, all of a sudden we've been seeing rapid development, and they're pushing, saying we are going to get Guardians open on time. We are going to do these things because we have to. And that drive is impressive to see, that they are moving ahead here despite restrictions and despite, having such a large financial cost. It doesn't really make sense to continue moving forward on these projects when you're looking at movie theaters aren't going to return in the future. We can launch a movie on Disney Plus that does not equal an immediate return on profit when you expected $1 billion, but now you're just hoping for a subscriber number increase.
Very well put. As always, and I agree with you that I think Josh D'Amaro is the perfect leader to spearhead the parks moving forward at this time. The lowest it has been since probably the 90s when Imagineering in general, it was an existential threat. I mean, executives and management were going, "Do we need the theme parks to begin with?" Yeah. So at least that's not what's happening. At least I think Iger invested a lot of money into the parks. He sees value in the parks. Even if what he sees as valuable about the parks is promoting a cohesive brand vision of the company. And Chapek likes the parks because he views them as a way to really, really sell merchandise and sell products. So I think he sees value in the parks, even if it's not the value that we would like. I think D'Amaro is a good kind of unifying figure in that sense. I think he wouldn't have gotten the job if Iger and Chapek didn't feel that he could still deliver on their needs. And I think Imagineers are happy and cast members are happy because they feel that he can still defend their needs as well. That's a good manager. I mean, that's just the good definition of a good manager. That's what you want in an executive. Which means that hopefully Imagineers and their projects will be listened to, and Josh D'Amaro can be the vessel to promote them to Chapek and Iger, if there's some contention about whether it fits to the company's goals or not. I'm optimistic about that with D'Amaro. With that said, I want to express my skepticism as well, which we talked about yesterday as well. And I said that as a preface because I do think there's a lot of hope with D'Amaro in the lead. My skepticism comes in, and this is just given we don't know those results yet, right? That's all us hoping. And of course, it's not unwarranted. It comes from case studies and an understanding of the history of the corporate shakeups that have been happening for the past decade with the company and longer. Pretty much ever since Walt died, every 5 years the company rattles. But my skepticism comes in I thought it was a wonderful speech. It ignited a flame in the fan community and the people who work for the company, But to me, it felt that it was really rhetorically strong, but didn't actually set forth deep down a new goal for the parks. I felt that everything that was expressed was just a passionate restating of the direction that the Iger and transitioning to Chapek years, exactly how they want the parks to go. And I want to bring into the final, the most famous part of I don't know if this speech is going to last or not. I mean, it could be like the Gettysburg Address, and we just don't know it's going to last. The world
They'll build
little
an
note
animatronic of Josh tomorrow and put him on
exactly.
the stage, and he'll
But I just want to read some quotes here. I'm trying to find the one I want to talk about. So at the end, there was sort of the famous thing that was spread around. There were clips of it. There were quotes of it that was, I dare this industry to stand proudly on the foundation that we've built, climb up on the shoulders of our legends. This legend, imagine partner statue is behind me, and then fly, right? Very good writing. There's a new Marty Sklar in the marketing department. And that's a compliment. That's very good writing. So the rhetoric is very strong, right? It lifts you up, but I want to go to the part that comes before that, which I think, did I even copy that? Okay, yeah. Okay. Where is it? Okay, did I find it? Yes, I found it. Okay. Yeah. I think this might be out of order. It's a combination of two quotes that were provided here. I dare you to dream bigger and differently. I dare you to say what you've always wanted to say. I dare you to and this is like to Imagineers or to the creators of, the theme park industry. I dare you to throw out the dogma that has us sometimes acting incrementally rather than exponentially. I dare you to make yourselves weak in the knees. I dare you to dare yourself. Oh my God, how exciting is that? Isn't that what we've always been talking about? Okay, but here's the second part of that. Why do we look at capacity as a function of the number of riders going through an attraction each hour? Couldn't capacity be our ability to engage with guests anywhere inside the park? It's a good point. Why do we accept friction points as a necessary byproduct of the environments we create? Do you really have to wait in line? Why can't guests choose exactly what they want to do when they want to do it? After all, isn't that what our millennials expect of us today? Why can't a trip to Walt Disney World be simple? So there's a lot to unpack with that, and there's many stuff that I agree with that. I agree. Why can't a trip to Walt Disney World be simple? It's caused the simplicity and the lack of choice to go away. More pre-planning, more boarding groups, more get your fast pass ahead of time. That has made it more complicated. It has eliminated the feeling of choice, the feeling of spontaneity in the parks. This is also, everything that was said in that statement there is all stuff that we've been talking about, that has been talked about for the past 5 or so years. It's nothing really new. And when I hear daring, I hear all the stuff that the fan community has been talking about. Original content. Let's push the limits of what what stories theme park attractions can tell. Let's make the next Haunted Mansion. When are we going to make the next Haunted Mansion? When are we going to make an attraction with original content that infuses itself in the popular culture? Why can't theme parks generate their own content that is just as powerful IP as a film company that they've acquired? Anyway, that to me is daring. Not necessarily the issue around capacity and this and that. Now, here's the thing. They keep using this word, millennial. Disney has been trying to court millennials for the past decade. What has it given us? Oh, we're trying to explore cueless lines. It's never really happened. We're going to add interactivity in the parks with apps or even before smartphones, weird things.
They're going to paint walls, bubblegum colored.
They're still obsessed with millennials. I got to tell you, I'm in my late 20s. There's a whole generation under me that has graduated college, okay? You got to stop obsessing over millennials. That is not, here's the thing, stop trying to appeal to any specific generation, because once you build the technology to appeal to Gen Z, they're going to be 30. So you have to appeal to humanity, because we're all the same. Oh, there's something I forgot to do, but I guess I'll have to paraphrase. It was going to be so much more powerful. There is a great video. We can link to it maybe. In the 70s, in Disney World's early years, that was released for cast members, breaking down what the Disney theme show is all about. And in it, it says something very interesting, and I can't quote it, unfortunately, but I'm able to paraphrase it. And I've said it on the show before, but it walks around everything in the 70s, Jeremy. That's a long time ago. Well, first of all, it's really not when you think about the history of civilization, but also I'm a believer that progress is relative, and with major technological leaps, there's actually very similar, if not same, response. So in the 70s, television was at its peak. The majority of Americans owned television sets. It was the major communication advancement. The only thing that has paralleled it is just about 20 years later, not that much longer, with the internet. So today we see statements like that about we have to appeal to millennials. Why can't they make decisions when they want to? Why can't we use their devices that they're glued to, which is so stupid and wrong, right? About millennials. There in the 70s, there was this whole consensus that somehow people would rather stay home glued to their television sets than go out and actually experience the real world. In the same way we talk about people would rather sit home and play video games or be glued to their phone than go out and experience the real world. And I think if anything's COVID has proven is that we love the real world. We love to go out and we love to experience it. So I would, in this video in the 70s about the Disney theme show and what it is, what it's all about, they say, if there's anything that the Disney parks have proven is that at the end of the day, universally, people want to go out and experience the real thing. We want to go out, we want to be together, we want to be in a physical space. And so I'd rather see, to me, it's more daring to say we're going to come out of COVID, we're going to come together, we're going to be in this space. You're not even going to want to pick this up. You're going to feel free to go into this line. You're going to say, what is that mansion over there? What is that, a mansion? What is that, a castle? What is that? I mean, colonial. I want to go there. And you choose to go there because the way the physical space is designed is what gives you that free choice, not your reservation for a fast pass or a boarding group on your phone. So I think that isn't as daring as it sounds. And I think they need to stop thinking that somehow millennials are different types of humans, different species of humans. We don't want to be, we never wanted to be glued to our phones. We never invented phones. We want to be in the physical space. And so does every generation below us for the rest of time. I think they need to refocus on the universalities of what humans want and need and are inspired by. That's daring to me, not virtual cues. And that's what I have to say about that.
And I have an interesting thing to say there, sort of a little bit of a rebuttal to that in some ways.
Sure, please.
Firstly, in the case of the daring speech, there, it's if we're going to refer to this something, it's the daring speech. Be daring.
The daring speech.
The be daring speech. But it really is a case where he's challenging the way the Imagineers have been operating, and really, I don't think it's the Imagineers' fault for this. It's challenging the Chapek, sort of administration of Imagineering and of the Parks division. Challenging the dogma, literally putting that in there, is they've been thinking in a certain way, operationally, and how they really have to submit to capacity limit and like delivering on this is like, we need to deliver the numbers. That's what the dogma is. That's what they're, so when you're talking about sort of how this seems to be more of the same, I really don't think of it that way, because the same, what we've been experiencing since the Eisner, era is pretty similar in that vein. Is like we've had this continuous chain in terms of like what we're selling these things. And I think that there's a different aspect when you have an announcement like the Princess and the Frog attraction, and you have something like that goes again, that does not make financial sense. It does not make sense to go to refurb Splash Mountain in terms of the cost is insanely high. Doing that, it doesn't make any sense at all. You're doing it for a social reason and for an art reason, not for a financial or an efficiency or a product reason. Princess Tiana simply has not sold well in terms of product at the parks. As an experience, however, there is a lot of evidence to show that Princess the Frog as a franchise, Princess Tiana as a character, Dr. Facilier as a character are incredibly popular at the parks. But that popularity in terms of a guest experience and the impact that it leaves on guests on their everyday, every day they visit the parks does not equate to the dollars that they expect from products. They expect, okay, you went and met Dr. Facilier, now you're going to go buy a t-shirt. But that's not what people are doing. They're going in, they're interacting with Dr. Facilier, and they're walking away with a smile on their face, remembering that experience for the rest of their lives, or, for however long they're at the parks. But that's a case where thinking of things that way is what he's trying to equate with in terms of talking about the capacity there. When we get down to that second part, which the daring speech is separate in terms of like, that is something he delivered to Imagineers. You know, in that thing, he says, I was at a town hall with Imagineering and this is what I said. The second part of that conversation, you know, this is transitioning. Now he's talking about capacity. Why do we think about these things this way? He's challenging, why have we always thought about the numbers versus thinking about it as an experience? And that's exactly, it comes down to numbers versus the experience versus the emotions versus the memories, because that's what he's trying to deliver on. He's saying that's what Disney is. That's what visiting a Disney park is. And, you know, I think that lines up with what you're hoping, you know, happens out of this. But, you know, saying that, then he starts to get into the technicalities, which is where you're having a little bit of a problem with this in terms of like, why are you trying to appeal to millennials? Why are you doing this? And when you're looking at it from a park side, from a management, from an operations side, those are the decisions they're making. They have to make decisions in terms of how do we deliver upon, you know, having you know, for you to have a good experience and for us to have all of these people all having a good experience, we have to manage that. How do we go about doing that? You can't just let people run all around the parks, because otherwise, you know, the big popular ride's going to have a 4 to 10 hour wait if it's Rise. Or, you know, it's that sort of a thing, is you're making a decision to say, how do we maximize people's enjoyment of this space? You know, how do we guarantee that this many people is able to go and have that experience? How do we do that? And how are we fair? And I think having all those systems, having the virtual, you know, group boarding groups, having the fast passes, having the wait lists, having the reservations, all of that builds the stress and the pressure on the guest. And that's not something that we've been preoccupied with relieving. We haven't been, you know, as in terms of management and operations and Imagineering, relieving that stress and making your vacation simple is simply not a priority of the company. In that case, it is not a priority. The change is now challenging all of that and saying, no, wait a second, the experience is the most important thing here. Not the numbers, the experience. So how do we make a good experience? That's why you see something like the Genie app, which is different from what they originally announced and is now being transformed. This is actually a follow-up presentation at IAPA, was all about technicality and like all of the background systems and about guest experience. And that's where they brought up the Genie app. It is alive and it's happening. What the purpose of the Genie app was to take all of these systems, put it in one thing so you can see it all in front of you, and it will actually plan things out for you and make suggestions. It will give you a choice. It'll say, hey, some fast passes just opened up over at Thunder Mountain. I see that you're walking by there. Would you like to get in? You know, would you like that? You know, it'll actually be smart, and it's using, you know, things like artificial, you know, intelligence. It's using these smart learning systems that we now have a, you know, plethora of, that it can actually start to make that. It can make suggestions to you and try and smooth out your experience. And yes, you know, you might want something simpler in terms of I just walk around and I go on the experience that I want. But from an operations side, that's really hard to deliver. And they need something technical to meet that need. And so the hope, the dream is for you to have one single app, one single, you know, interactive piece, not to have multiple pieces of interaction, just one simple thing to keep simplifying. So that's actually a near-term thing. We can see this delivered, you know, the Genie app could come out in the next 6 months and we could see what that looks like. So there is a lot of potential here. And that's specifically what I think he's mentioning there, because it lines exactly up with that vision in terms of we are now focusing, we are transitioning from the Chapek era, the numbers era, the accounting era, the product era, to the experience era. Back to the experience, the art, the passion, the interactions between a cast member and a guest. Something that, you know, that focus on, here is an individual, a person, a cast member who's passionate about what they do. Here's a guest who is looking to experience that with the cast member for that interaction to take place. That hasn't been a highlight of previous eras. That was not something talked about during the Chapek era. It was all intellectual property, intellectual property, intellectual property, product, product, product. And all of the language in this entire speech with Josh D'Amaro was all really focused in on experience. Now, there's one caveat there is all the previous projects that have already been greenlit, all the things that have already been done. he had to talk about all of those experiences, whether it's Avengers Campus or whether it's Ratatouille. He didn't oversee those. He wasn't involved with those, but he still has to sell that to you in some ways. He needs to intermix that message or that product with his message of experience. And it's not about, look at Ratatouille, the IP, look at how you connect to it. It's, we're going to deliver on this experience. We're going to have you be involved with this, and you're going to have fun as a family doing this. It's that language that I love to see. It's why I love Josh D'Amaro, because that's the way he talks. That's not just him during a presentation. Yes, there's an amazing writer behind, most of that speech, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that is also Josh D'Amaro himself. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Josh D'Amaro on a number of occasions and just saying hello to him in the parks. And he just has conversations that way. That is who he is authentically as a person. Chapek, he had that problem in terms of he's not a spokesperson. He has stage fright. He doesn't want to be the center of attention in that way. And yet that's where he finds himself. And so that's a challenge for him. There are examples where he does the Galaxy's Edge presentation and he does these things and he's passionate about it, but he's passionate about it from an intellectual property. Aren't you guys excited to go see Chewbacca? Aren't you guys excited to go on the Millennium Falcon? That's his angle, is we're selling the product. Aren't you excited about having that product sold to you? But that's what he's training himself to do. That's what he's been doing. That's what he does when he goes and addresses shareholders. But there's a difference between addressing shareholders and addressing guests and addressing creatives. And that's kind of that's the grand speech that I would say. It is kind of a rebuttal, but also adds on top of your concerns. Because there's evidence to back up what Josh D'Amaro is saying and the direction that he is leading the company. And I think a lot of that evidence is actually going to show up relatively soon. It won't be long before you start seeing projects that have been transformed by Josh D'Amaro being present in those rooms. We've already seen it. Splash Mountain being greenlit is a Josh D'Amaro project. That is Josh D'Amaro's direction, taking the lead of Runaway Railway, which just showed off how amazing surface projection can be. Sharita Carter, by the way, she's a fantastic Imagineer. Exactly. But taking her and putting her on that project and saying, we're reimagining this classic attraction. Splash Mountain's a classic. We're bringing back Tony Baxter to consult because here are all these old plans that we need to go through and figure out how we do this. They greenlit this project without even knowing how they were going to do it. This is purely from we're passionate about doing this and transforming what the company does and what we say. We're going to follow through on delivering on an inclusive environment. Every guest who walks through those gates should be able to see themselves reflected in the happiest place on earth. That is what we're going to deliver upon. That's an experience thing. That's not a numbers thing. That doesn't make financial sense. And yes, Josh D'Amaro is going to be able to, deliver all the cash flow back towards the shareholders and, show the numbers. He will be able to do that. It's why he's in the position that he is because Bob Iger and Chapek know that he can do that. But on the flip side, he understands what the parks represent and what they can do. And so that is the reason that he is in his place. It's the reason that entire message, that panel, left such an impact on me. And it makes me believe in that future. Again, we should be skeptical of all of this, but it should also be okay to have some hope. Have some hope for the future, that things are going to be bright out of this, and that we are looking at a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Yes.
A great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Oh!
A great, big, beautiful tomorrow, shining at the end of every day.
And thank you for responding to my skepticism. I do share the same hope as you. And thank you for picking that apart. You're absolutely right about all of that. And I'll let you have the final word because you are our guest. I could talk forever about the history of how capacity is better handled through more physical interaction than more digital interaction. But that's another conversation for another time. Channeling Dick Nunes and Jack Lindquist and all that. But I thank you, Freddy, for reminding us of the hope of Josh D'Amaro. And I agree. I very much look forward to his reign. We just have to get out of this this time we're currently in for him to truly shine and lead the way. And I do believe that he will. But I'm always going to offer some counter to that. I think it's important to be skeptical of anyone who makes a lot of money. So
yes, definitely.
But yeah, thank you for that. That was great. Matt, do you have anything you'd like to say?
First, I'd like to say that I feel like I'm the only person in the world that is sad that the festival center is not being built in Epcot. I love the design.
Oh, I am too. It was. I actually thought it was a great design. Yeah,
the design was great. Mid-century modern, like it fit right in terms of futurism aspect. That was the exciting thing for me is, and this does kind of lean into the Epcot, sort of thing of aesthetics. The aesthetics are great. Like the design that they're going with is amazing, and it does weave everything together. The reimagining of these different areas of the park. It's similar to what happened with DCA. It is aesthetics, but aesthetics do matter. The park does look better when it has that consistency, and it's not all of these things just mashed together. And that it's the same thing they've been trying to do across all of their parks during the Iger period of time here. It's they've been trying to do that. The parks have an identity. And that matters, and it dictates what projects go there and how they look. It'll be interesting to see. Again, a lot of those things are still on the back burner, and who knows what's going to happen. But they do have projects like Guardians that Guardians is the Cars land of Epcot. Guardians is what's going to bring people in for its anniversary, and so they need to finish that project.
Yeah.
We can spend the next 2 years getting all of the other things that they've announced, but without Guardians being there to bring in people and bring in the money, that investment can't happen, especially since we're in the situation that we are now. They need to be able to bring in that money while still transforming things, versus having all of this cash flow, because every Marvel film's making $1 billion. And so then it makes it easy for you to continue to invest. Now you need to balance those things.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is right now, is it's a balancing act. It's figuring out what makes sense right now. What's the priority? Okay, we can do Guardians because that's going to bring people in. Spaceship Earth is the art project. Spaceship Earth is the message that we want to send to our guests, but we can't do that without making financial sense and being able to actually pay for that transformation.
Yeah.
It'll still happen. But it's not going to happen for a little bit because we need you to go ride our amazing, innovative roller coaster, the Omni Coaster, which is an amazing name.
Omni Coaster.
The Omni Coaster, yes. So good. Gosh, I can't wait. But we need that to do well. We need to bring people in. I mean, this all wraps together so nicely.
Yeah, exactly. It does. Perfectly constructed show today.
Right in a neat little bow, yeah. Wrapped up perfectly. Well, I think, unless you guys have any final thoughts on this great topic, I think we can go ahead and move on here.
I don't think you want our final thoughts or we'll run another hour, so I think we should just cap it off.
All right. Well, I mean, as long as we get bathroom breaks, I mean, I don't have anything else going on after this, but... Well, on that note, everybody, thank you all for coming to today's episode. As always, links to all of our socials will be down in the description. Jeremy's Twitter, Freddy's podcast, the whole 9 yards, you guys. You know the deal. And yeah, Freddy, before you go, is there anything you'd like to say to to the audience listening or watching at home?
Absolutely. So Imagine Tomorrow, which is a podcast where themed entertainment meets the future and futurism. I've been having Tim Delaney on. I've been having a few Imagineers on the podcast, sort of documenting their stories and their tribal knowledge and just having them talk at length about the things they're passionate about and about their experience at WDI. So Tim Delaney is sort of our latest subject. I talked to him for 3.5 hours, which I've now taken that conversation and broken it up into episodes. Yeah. So the second part of our conversation with Tim Delaney will be out this Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. So make sure to stay tuned. Follow that podcast and you'll get that in your feed, and it's going to be a really good time. Make sure to listen to the first part too.
Yes. Links in the description. As always, Jeremy, anything you'd like to say before we sign off here?
Not really. I mean, I was telling Freddy the other day how essential it is to be chronicling and documenting the stories and the careers of the second generation. I was saying how the very early theme park, the kind of first generation of theme park fans, when it was blogs and newsletters and sending people VHS tapes and DVDs and CDs, digital newsletters and stuff like that. That generation chronicled and documented and interviewed Mark Davis, John Hench, Claude. And I don't know about Claude Coase, is kind of recluse, but Rolly Crump. And so the work that Freddy and a lot of other people are doing and spending 3.5 hours with Tim Delaney, one of the most important of the second generation Imagineers, is going to be essential work for the next generation of Disney content creators, whatever they're going to call themselves in a decade or more.
Disney content creators. Jeremy, don't give them any ideas, Jeremy. Come on.
I mean, that's what we call ourselves, right? That's what we call this generation, like Disney content creators.
That's fair.
I don't know. So yeah, it's important work. So go take a listen to that. And I think those Imagineers will be making the rounds. They have been for the past few years. So and now Joe Rhode.
Guess what?
Available.
Joe Rhode just made himself available. There you go.
I just exactly. So hey, lots of important work. So yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, links to everything will be down in the description below. And yeah, if you guys would like to call in throughout the week, 575-386-5814. Leave a voicemail. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the panels that these two discussed. And I think on that note, it's time to go ahead and end the show. So thank you all for coming. And as always, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.